I knew Karen was unhinged, but I didn't think she'd send a cop to my front door to confiscate my own pool keys. Not just any cop, though, her husband. He showed up in full uniform, badge gleaming under the porch light, his hand resting on his duty belt like he was about to serve a high-risk warrant. He didn't knock, he pounded. When I opened the door, he didn't even look me in the eye. "Hand over your pool access keys," he said, his voice a practiced monotone. "HOA directive." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "My pool, my backyard, my land, you want to run that directive by me again, officer?" He didn't like that. His jaw tightened and he took a step into my personal space. But what he didn't know, what Karen hadn't accounted for in her little power play, was that I wasn't the only one home. My daughter, who had just graduated from the state academy, heard the commotion. She stepped out from the hallway, her real badge pinned to her hip, her posture perfect. She looked him dead in the face, her voice calm and chilling. "Officer," she said, "I suggest you take a very deep breath and remember exactly what your oath covers, because it definitely doesn't cover civil HOA disputes." His expression cracked. "Before we go deeper into how this ended, tell me where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because this is the day their fake authority met a very real reality check." I didn't inherit this home. I didn't stumble into it or get it handed down like some family heirloom. I bought it, every inch of it, after 15 years as an EMT. I've spent more nights sleeping in the back of an ambulance or my own truck than I care to admit. When I say this property means something to me, I'm talking about survival. I wanted a place where my lungs could breathe without pressure. The pool out back wasn't just water, it was the finish line of a 20-year sprint. The neighborhood seemed peaceful when I moved in. Quiet lawns, friendly nods. I actually believed the community standards talk at first, but the cracks showed fast. It started with whispers on the sidewalks, neighbors who looked away too quickly, hints of favoritism in the monthly newsletters. Then I noticed the cameras, not mine, theirs, angled just a little too perfectly toward my backyard. That's when the frustration started tightening into concern. You know that feeling when you realize someone is hunting for a reason to come after you? That was my daily life. But they didn't know I spent a decade and a half staying calm in the middle of highway wrecks and overdoses. I know the difference between authority and ego. When the developer sold the remaining lots, the poison arrived. A brand new HOA formed overnight, led by people who had never held a flashlight for a paramedic in the rain. They swept in with smiles, claiming they wanted improvement, but their first order of business was rewriting the covenants to give themselves retroactive authority over every home, including mine. "It applies to everyone now," Karen told me during our first chat. "I didn't sign anything, Karen," I replied, keeping my voice level. "My deed is clear." She just smiled, that perma-smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, stretched so tight it looks like a warning label. "We'll see about that, sweetheart." The harassment escalated with a terrifying intention. First, it was the immediate action required notices, bright yellow slips taped to my door like a threat. Then came the claims: my pool chemicals were hazardous, my fence height was non-compliant, and the big one, I had to leave my side gate unlocked for regular compliance checks. Translation: we want to walk into your yard whenever we feel like it. I started keeping receipts. I installed high-angle, motion-sensitive cameras. Within 24 hours, they paid for themselves. The footage was staggering. I watched Karen leaning so far over my fence she nearly tipped over, phone raised to record me swimming. I saw another board member rattling my gate latch at midnight. Then the worst clip, a board member simply walking into my yard while I was at work, taking photos of my pool equipment and strolling out like he owned the place. I wasn't just frustrated anymore, I was documenting a crime. In this state, a fence isn't just a barrier, it's a legal boundary. Crossing it without permission is criminal trespass. Period. Then came the rumors. Karen began telling the neighborhood I was unstable. She told people the fumes from my pool were tanking property values. I saw neighbors who used to wave now cross the street to avoid me. A mother pulled her kids away from my dog like I was contagious. It's a lonely feeling when your own community turns its back on you because one woman wants control. The final straw arrived in a red envelope. It wasn't a notice, it was an ultimatum. Grant the HOA full access within 7 days or further action would be taken. 2 days later, an anonymous note was shoved in my mailbox: sell before it gets messy. I sat on my bed that night, the note limp in my hand. I felt the weight of it all, the silence of the house, the isolation. But then I remembered something Karen clearly forgot. I'm a paramedic. I don't panic, I collect data. I spent that night reviewing state codes. I confirmed what I already suspected. My pool was a pre-existing non-conforming use. They had zero legal grounds to force new rules on it. More importantly, they were not law enforcement. They were neighbors with clipboards, and they were currently racking up a list of statutory violations that would make a prosecutor's eyes light up. When my daughter came home from the academy for the weekend, she saw the red envelope on the counter. She didn't say much at first, she just read it, then looked at the camera footage I'd saved on my tablet. The calm, professional mask she'd learned at the academy settled over her face. "Dad," she said quietly, "they think they're the law, let's show them what the law actually looks like." That brings us back to the front porch. Karen's husband, Officer Miller, standing there in his blues trying to intimidate a problem homeowner into giving up his keys. "I'm not giving you anything, Miller," I said, my voice as steady as it was when I used to call in vitals to the ER. "In fact, I'm giving you exactly 60 seconds to get off my property before my daughter here calls your sergeant to report an officer using his uniform to facilitate a civil trespass and harassment." Miller's face went from stone cold to bright red in 3 seconds. "This is a legal HOA directive." "It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment and state trespassing statutes," my daughter interrupted, her voice gaining a sharp, authoritative edge. "I've got the footage of your board members entering this yard without a warrant or permission, and right now you're standing here under color of law trying to seize private property. Do you really want to lose your pension over Karen's obsession with pool tiles?" The silence that followed was heavy. Miller looked at me, then at my daughter, then at the Ring camera mounted above the door. He knew he was being recorded. He knew he was outmatched. "We're not done," he muttered, though he was already backing down the steps. "Actually," I said, leaning out the door, "we are. Tell Karen to check her certified mail tomorrow. My lawyer sent over the cease and desist along with the bill for the trespassing violations. And Miller, next time you want to play tough guy, make sure you aren't doing it on a cop's porch." The look of pure realization dawning horror on his face as he realized my daughter wasn't just in school but was a sworn officer of the state was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. He practically ran to his cruiser. A week later, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. They tried to vote me out, but I showed up with a folder full of evidence and a lawyer who specialized in HOA abuse. When I played the video of the board member creeping through my yard at night, the room went silent. When I mentioned the "sell before it gets messy" note, the board president turned white. Karen tried to scream, tried to claim she was protecting the community, but no one was listening anymore. The neighbors she'd lied to were now looking at her like the liability she was. By the end of the month, the board was dissolved and Karen's husband was under internal investigation. I still have my pool, I still have my peace. And every time I go for a swim, I make sure to wave at the empty spot on the fence where Karen used to peek over. She doesn't peek anymore. Power is a funny thing. People like Karen think it's something you take. They don't realize that real power is just staying calm while your enemy destroys themselves.